all of us can ask ourselves, what is the one thing that we're struggling to accept right now? And what aspect of that is not okay with you? Because I also think that there's a huge area for us to understand ourselves and where our opportunity of growth is.
I will not tolerate you acting that way, saying that, speaking to me in that fashion, whatever the case may be. If you grew up in invalidating environments, though, it's going to take time to develop the skill set to be able to do that. And it very much is a skill. Hey, everybody, it's Bianca.
And it's Emilia.
Welcome to another episode of Evolve Ventures, where we're helping growth minded humans evolve by breaking one limiting belief at a time. We hope you enjoyed the last episode, number 287, Motivation Monday, How to Be More Likable. For today, 288, does accepting mean it's okay? How many times have you and I had a conversation with a client where they said something along the lines of, I don't want to accept this because I don't believe that this is okay, or I don't want to accept my family for the way that they are, or I don't know how to, process this because it just doesn't feel okay. Like, how many times have you had a conversation along the lines of that with somebody?
Honestly, in my almost 30 years on this planet, I feel like I have that conversation at least 3 times a day. So if you multiply and do that math, man, I'm telling you, it is something that continuously comes up in conversations with clients and community members. Yes, but honestly, there's a vibe that comes in the energy of the conversations with people that I'll just randomly have. Like wherever I go, there's a through line in that always bubbles up. So we cannot understate how much this conversation that we're going to have on this podcast is for everybody.
This is a really big reason why we struggle going through the acceptance cycle and why we struggle to really make good, positive, adaptive change in our lives. It's because we struggle to understand the difference between acceptance and permission. Or what's a
Mm.
better word? Not permission, like acceptance versus like justification or validation or making something be okay, for
Yeah.
lack of a better phrase. What we're really going to be diving into today is what is the difference between that, and how do you move forward when you're experiencing these things? How do you work through that narrative of, I don't know how, mm, I don't know how to move forward because I don't want this person to feel like it's okay. I don't want to forgive you because I don't want you to believe like what you did was okay. That's really what
Mm.
we're going to be diving into today. And I was actually talking to a client this morning before we recorded this, and we were having a dialogue about her parents. And we
Mhm.
were talking about how she really struggles with emotional vulnerability. She struggles putting herself first. She really struggles feeling as though she belongs in this world and like she has a place and she fits. And she came up with this whole convoluted story about her parents' intentions behind what they did and why they did the things that they did. And she came up with this whole narrative. And I stopped her and I said, you're coming up with this really big narrative, and it sounds like you're trying to justify your parents' behavior to
Mhm.
somehow make it okay what they did. And she's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that. I said,
Mhm.
maybe that is true. Maybe your parents did have these like crazy concoctions in their mind about their behavior. Probably not, but
Mm.
let's assume that they did. Does that take away what you feel? Does that take away the hurt? Does that take away what the outcome of their behavior was? And she's like, no, honestly, it kind of makes me feel worse because I'm disregarding myself.
Yeah.
I feel like people do that
Mhm.
because they don't know how to deal with the emotions that they're experiencing. Have you sensed that? Have you seen that?
Honestly, 1,000%. And you and I originally had this episode be birthed out of you and I's conversation post our 40th virtual live event Out of the Mud be. And it was because we had, the event itself was about accepting the things that we cannot change. And what of course is one of the biggest things that came up during that event was a lot of family stuff, a lot of the now we're adults. Yes, technically children of parents, but through line of this was that we are adult children of emotionally immature or unaware parents. And
Mhm,
so this episode is such a prevalent conversation that you and I have with people, but so few of those people that we have conversations with are rarely having this dialogue with someone that they really need to have it with. So like for example,
mhm,
their parents. If they have still parents around, right? And if not, are they shifting into the acceptance stage? Are they shifting into what is really necessary to have, which is the component of acceptance, the process of acceptance, which involves the emotions, Bianca, to be able to navigate those and understand what they are and be curious about what those emotions are that are contributing to the lack of acceptance of maybe your parents did their best, but it wasn't enough for you at that time. And that still doesn't take away from the emotional experience that you have. And quite frankly, that you carry with you throughout your entire life unless you learn this process that we're going to talk about, which is, letting go and recognizing that just because you are accepting it doesn't mean that it was okay and doesn't take away from your experience, like you said.
I remember having conversations with my brother, when I was really in the thick of the, like, family conflict that I was having with all of them, like, when I had first come out and
Mhm.
when I was, just in that period of my life, and I remember me and my brother really getting into heated arguments about
Yeah.
why my parents were doing what they were doing, and he was very much on the side of they grew up in a culture
Mhm.
that was radically different from the one that you grew up in. And yes, we were raised by them in a Middle Eastern fashion, but we grew up in America and they
Right.
grew up overseas and they have very different beliefs and ideas. And I remember saying to him, I fully understand that. I fully see your point,
Mhm.
but that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away their responsibility to acculturate and
Mhm.
to work through their own limiting beliefs and work through their behaviors and emotions that they're projecting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us get really stuck in that, even in like relationships, like intimate relationships. It's like, oh, well, they're avoidant and they don't know how to express emotion. So, you know, it's okay that they're treating me like crap. It's like, well, that's also
Yeah.
an extreme.
Right.
You can accept that a person has an avoidant attachment, but it doesn't mean that you tolerate their behavior. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you degrade and betray yourself
Mhm.
in order to make what they're doing okay or
Yeah.
to have empathy. I think that's a big component of it too, Em. It's we don't know how to have empathy while also holding people accountable for their behavior. So it's like you have to do one or the other. You either accept it in totality and
Yeah.
make it okay that they're doing what they're doing, or you completely fight them and reject it and you say that's not okay and nothing about this is okay and then you
Yeah.
end up in that like inner conflict.
Well,
Have you seen that? You
it's
do you
because
notice that?
absolutely, it's because there's such an all or nothing thinking, that cognitive
100%.
distortion, the black and white thinking that's involved with it. Because, and quite
100%.
frankly, I have empathy for that because there's not a I mean, think about this. This is conversation that we're having around emotional intelligence. This is conversation that we're having around psychology. And anyone that went through difficult or low valence emotions like sadness or disgust or fear, like all of that has been pathologized. And if you're not happy or celebrating the fact that you grew up with a roof and, clothes on your back, then there's something wrong with you. And if you should go talk to someone in the corner where no one acknowledges the fact that, like, that's a normal human experience to have. Emotions are normal experiences to have. And quite frankly, if you're not experiencing emotions and working through those, then there's a different issue at hand. But here's the thing, though it's been pathologized to have these discussions and even reflect on this stuff, there's also been a lot of, shall we say, do this and don't do that.
Mm,
You can accept it, but here's the thing, if you accept it, that means that you have to do XYZ, right? So it really pushes you on one end of the non-existent spectrum that actually now we're seeing exists. So you're all in and you are rejecting of their behavior, and it's not okay, and you're still involved with that. There's no boundaries, or you have boundaries, you completely accept, and you're struggling with whether or not it's okay. Like, there's such a binary thinking that's in this arena. And again, if we have low repetitions, how could we possibly build the skill of being able to see this as a spectrum instead of an all or nothing thinking be? It's like that we're not giving ourselves those opportunities.
100%. I've been reading the DBT manual. So for anyone who doesn't know, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, it's an off branch of CBT, which is what I got my degree in. It's an
Mhm,
off branch of CBT that's specifically targeted for individuals struggling with borderline personality disorder and parasuicidal behavior, so like non-suicidal self-injurious behavior.
mhm,
And one of the things that she emphasizes very heavily in that book is that a lot of people who end up developing borderline personality disorder grew up in really invalidating environments.
mhm,
And so think about it from this context. I say this to everybody. Every single one of us has traits of borderline personality disorder. It's because it's on a spectrum,
mhm,
right? We all have traits of every single diagnosis, which is why I don't like giving diagnoses. I don't think they're helpful. I
mhm,
think what's more helpful is how much, how often, how frequent, what's the impact,
mhm.
because everything is on a spectrum. So when you grow up in an emotionally invalidating environment where basically all of your thoughts and all of your feelings and all of your experiences are basically being denied and rejected,
Or not even
you're,
safe enough to be expressed or
right,
experienced fully. Mhm,
right. You have to end up with this binary thinking of, well, whatever they're doing is okay, because you're not going to be safe otherwise. You're not going to, there's this feeling that I'm going to be in danger if I don't accept this. I'm not allowed to express. I'm not allowed to have an opinion. Or if I do, it has to be this extreme reaction because that's the only time when my needs are met. Now,
yeah,
again, this is coming from a book on people who are struggling the far end of the extreme with this,
mhm,
but we all have experiences of being in environments where we felt invalidated, where we
yeah,
felt as though our thoughts don't matter, our experiences don't matter, our emotions don't matter, and if I say anything or if I counter whatever this person is telling me, I risk being abandoned. I risk
yeah,
being harmed. I risk being, you know, cast aside or having some dilemma ensue. So, of
mhm,
course, you kind of end up in this binary thinking of, well, I have to just accept it. I have to make it okay because what's
mhm,
going to happen to me if I don't?
right,
Or you end up on the opposite end where you're in this extreme hyper individualism and you push everybody away.
yeah.
And neither of those are adaptive. Neither of those are good for you. And you and I have been on both ends of that spectrum. You were on the far hyper individual side, and I
Yep,
was on the far other end of like, never stick up for yourself, never say anything, accept everybody's behavior, or you're going to be abandoned.
right,
And you got to find that middle ground. So,
mhm,
telling someone that their behavior is not okay, you can accept that this is the way that this person is presenting themselves right now,
Mhm.
and it does not make it okay. And I will not tolerate you acting that way, saying that, speaking to me in that fashion, whatever the case may be. If you grew up in invalidating environments, though, it's going to take time to develop the skill set to be able to do that. And it very much is a skill.
It really is. It really is. I have one client in mind that I want to share as an example. And obviously keep it anonymous, but I think the story is very prevalent and really showcases her journey through this, just like all of us. While we might not be in her unique position, there's a lot of things that can translate to your life.
Hi, my name is Kayleigh Putnam, and I'm an intern at Evolve Ventures Tech, and I work with data analytics. I just wanted to come on here and talk about my experience with the Evolve team. Every single day, I learn new skills, not only my position, but also how to become the best and most aligned version of myself. I've learned through their support that I can achieve any goal I set my mind to, and anything that I want to happen will happen if I work hard enough. I've never met a group of more supportive and genuine people than at Evolve. Every single day, members check in on other members, asking if they're okay, what they can do to help, and it's such a caring environment. And I'm so grateful I got the opportunity to work with this team because I feel like they've truly given me what I need to be successful in my future careers, and I'm so grateful for that.
So she is someone who has a toddler, and one of the past weekends that we just had, she was bringing her toddler and her partner, going over to her partner's family house for like just obviously connection time, dinner time, whatever, right? And throw in the fact that she has a dog who doesn't get along with the family's dog that is at the household she's going to. Now there's a totally huge history here, that there's a lot of boundaries where it's essentially the family that she's going to has really low standards when it comes to overall responsibility when it comes to dog behavior. So, for example, that dog is not neutered, extremely hyper aggressive when it comes to trying to dominate, hump, or mount other dogs when it gets around it. And she brings her little dog over, and she wants to make sure that they're separated so that there's no kind of rapey action going on. And for lack of better words, that's really what's happening. She notices that her little dog is like freaking out in the corner, so much so that they have to put her dog on the table when she goes over there so that the family
Oh.
dog doesn't attack her, right? So exactly, right? Imagine. So she has her toddler, she has her dog, and she's in that family environment. And what do you know? One of the aunts feels bad for the dog that's on the ground trying to get the dog that's on the table. Now, the dog that's on the table, there's a toddler right to the right of her. She's sitting at the table, and the aunt comes
Oh,
over and says,
no.
I feel bad for this dog, and puts the dog up on the table, or to try to visit this dog on the table. In the mix, the toddler is right there and the dogs are snapping at each other. So imagine two mouths of dogs snapping at each other right next to and in front of a child's face. So that type of behavior, while the mother in that situation, it was like, I can't, like, that is absolute no, because I'm not okay with that. She accepts the fact that the family of her partner has extremely low standards around the care and the responsibility when it comes to not only the dog behavior, but also what's okay in front of a child and that experience. She can accept that as their standard, but she will not have that be okay with her. And I'm so freaking proud of her because of the fact that she was the exemplary at one point. She would
Mm.
have to just kind of go along with her partner's standards, or her partner's family, sorry, low standards of dog, ownership and responsibility and childcare. And at one point, she like literally thought that she was going to lose love from her partner if she didn't go along with the really, quite frankly, like neglectful and really like not good behaviors. Now, through our coaching, what she's done is she's started to share with me some of those stories in confidence. And I've helped her to create a safe environment to where what you're feeling, and this is all of us, how many of us have an environment where we have experiences like that? It's not okay in our body. Maybe you don't have a child, maybe you don't have a kid, but there's definitely an experience that you've had with family or friends or even work where it's been a no, this is not okay in your body, and you've been caught in that messy middle of like, I don't know how to communicate this to this family, this coworker, this friend, this intimate partner. And so afterwards, it just, your body retains that. You don't have a safe space to talk about it and to really validate your experience of your body said, this is not okay. But because I might lose love, I have to accept it, question mark. So through those dialogues that she and I had, I was like, you know what, honestly, like, what are your values? What are your values and how is your standard of behavior? Like, what do you want for your child in that situation? What do you not, what don't you want for not only your child, but your dog and also you? And when she started to share that, I can accept that they're like that. I don't want to because I'm not okay with it, but here's the thing, what I can do is I can leave those environments. What I can do is I cannot bring the dog. What I can do is have conversations with these family members, slowly over time help build in what my standards and what my boundaries are around this when it comes to the childcare and the dogs interacting. And through that, she's now gone from complete binary shrink, don't ever speak up for what you care about, to now, and she's kind of in that like trying to do it and passive aggressive speaking up for what's not okay. And we all have to kind of go through that messy middle because quite frankly there's a very few people who model that in real time. But I was on a coaching call with her and she shared a win because she actually spoke up. The fact that she can accept how this family member responded and brought the dog up to the table right in front of her toddler's face. She can accept the fact that maybe she shouldn't have brought the dog and all that because she knew that that was likely going to happen. But what's not okay is she's going to own and she's going to speak up for it. And she's going to make sure that in the future, that's not going to happen again. And so that messy middle that she's working towards is what all of us, the skill bee that you and I are talking about, all of us can cultivate and develop to get away from the binary thinking. The messy middle is helping you understand and experience what that spectrum is and what the spectrum is for you. And what's not okay for her is going to be, she's going to probably be gaslit in her family, and that's kind of this natural progression because when she actually has boundaries, all of those people, including family, were benefiting from her not having them because that means they don't have to change. That means they don't have to look back at themselves and say, you know what, that was actually extremely irresponsible for us to put that in front of your child. So,
Acceptance is acknowledgement. It is not submission.
facts. Ooh, beautiful.
Thank you. I can accept the fact that, what's a good example? I can accept the fact, so acknowledge the fact that I grew up in a family and in a culture that is very homophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not okay for me. And I chose to take actions that were in my best interest, that supported my values and my beliefs and my aspirations. And now we're all better for it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't easy. It was
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable as hell. We all made mistakes, but we got to a place where now we're able to actually have a really good relationship.
Yeah.
And there are still a ton of people in my family who are still incredibly homophobic and they just won't say it to your face. And I'm like, okay, I accept, AKA acknowledge, that that is your belief.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not okay with it though, which means I don't have to go around you, which means
Mm-hmm.
I get to choose what I do in response.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and that's really what we're talking about here. It's owning your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's owning the way that you think and feel and behave in response to how people treat you. It's
Yeah.
taking a very empowered approach as opposed to, feeling like everything is just being done to you and you have no sense of control over it.
Yeah. It shifts it.
Accepting means you acknowledge it. It doesn't mean you think it's okay.
Hmm.
I accept that there's a lot of hatred and homophobia in this world. It's the reality. It is the truth,
Hmm.
but it's not my truth. It doesn't have to be true for me. I accept that my national grid bill was off the freaking rails the last couple of
Hmm.
months because of an issue that I was having in my apartment. I accept it. I acknowledge it. It is the truth, but it doesn't make it okay. It doesn't mean that I'm going to keep it that way and not try to do something about it and elicit help from people who can help me. Acceptance means that you're seeing it at face value for what it is.
Yeah.
Making it okay is a choice. And you have autonomy in that.
Mm. Here's the thing. And I want to kind of wrap this episode up. I really want to ask our listeners, how much do they believe that last statement? Because our beliefs around if we have a choice, that really plays into our own levels of self belief. Do we believe in our abilities? 0 to 10. Do you believe in your ability to acknowledge and like hold within yourself that you're not okay with that? Because I know a lot of people struggle holding that duality because of nothing other than the fear of what that might do or what the consequence of holding that duality might have. And that's totally fair. We want to create a safe space for that. So 0 to 10, dear listener, like where do you fall on being able to hold that duality? Is it I struggle to accept that whatever it is, insert whatever it is for you. And I I honestly struggle to make it okay. I struggle to recognize that XYZ, right? Whatever that is. Or 10, do you hold the duality really well of the fact that I'm actually really good at acknowledging things? And I make sure that if my body says it's not okay, I respond well to that, or my mind or whatever it is. I respond to that. I create action moving forward based off of that second part. And that
Mm.
second part is predicated on the first. Because Bianca, even like that's a great example, more practical for a national bill thing, right? A lot of people might not even acknowledge that it is what it is, the face value aspect, and that prevents even more ability to feel like, okay, it's not okay. It's not okay, and therefore I'm going to do something differently. Right? So there's so many different applications on this, whether it be a national grid bill, whether it be a family situation, whether it be, global homophobia, whatever it is. I think that all of us can ask ourselves, what is the one thing that we're struggling to accept right now? And what aspect of that is not okay with you? Because I also think that there's a huge area for us to understand ourselves and where our opportunity of growth is. And I always see the silver lining in things. And honestly, every single conversation that I've had with people around this topic has helped illuminate for them how capable they truly are and how much they're so like called to act in this way because it's brought them so much pain.
Do you know why you're able to see the silver lining in things?
Tell me.
Because of this exact thing.
Mm.
You've developed the skill of being able to acknowledge what is and the self-belief that you have the capability to make changes in line with your values and beliefs.
Yeah, facts. The
Which is
more you can accept, the
exactly
more you have that ability.
Yes, which is exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You become more in control of your life when you can learn how to accept things for what they are, not making it worse than it is, but
Yeah.
also not diminishing it, right?
Facts.
I didn't diminish the fact that my family was extremely homophobic at
Mhm.
that time. I didn't diminish it. I didn't try to make it less than to make it more comfortable for me. But I also, well, back then I did blow it up, but I learned how to not also catastrophize it.
Mhm.
And over time, I learned, okay, how do I respond to this? What do I do? Not just
Mm.
letting it destroy me, which I did in the beginning, granted, which is why I didn't handle it well. Your ability to really see the truth, like the truth
Mm.
of something at face value, not making it worse than it is, not trying to diminish it, but really seeing it.
Yeah.
And then coming up with adaptive solutions towards it, whether it is emotion focused coping, so like learning how to just accept it and be
Mhm.
okay within yourself, not making the situation okay, but accepting within yourself, or creating solutions for the situation, is how
Mhm.
you build a really strong sense of autonomy and independence in your life. It is a skill that you 100% can learn.
Mm.
And if it's something you're interested in, we have so many resources at Evolve that can help you with that. Whether it's the brand new You Do You program, whether it's one on one coaching and therapy, whether it's Out of the Mud, the articles we have, like there's so many resources here that you can utilize, you
Yeah.
know?
And what I would
Me-
suggest if oh, sorry, go ahead, B. Go, go,
Go
go.
ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
I
I'm
was just
done.
gonna say so if you are falling on, I would say the 7 or below scale that I suggested all of us kind of rate ourselves at, that means that you need to dip your toe in a little bit more. And a little bit more looks like in this avenue, the you to you therapy. And we've gotten feedback from people who have really jumped into that it is a perfect toe dip into this area of really cultivating that skill. Because, say,
Mhm.
for example, you're not someone who can envision yourself right now going hammy in therapy or coaching. You can't really imagine yourself really, having that level of accountability, having those mirrors, all that happy jazz, and to that extent, having that degree of progress. That is where the You Do You program meets you where you are at your pace on your own time. And that's the thing that we have gotten some amazing feedback from our members that we have right now active and going through the program, that it meets you where you're at. And it helps you realize at a small step pace how you can improve the skills that you desperately need that are going to help you activate and navigate this life and your potential. So that link to get all the information around that is going to be in the show notes, along with all the happy, juicy episodes that we got for you to continue to listen to if this episode resonated. Bianca, what is your episode takeaway for our listeners that you would recommend, and your suggested episode?
You said that so interestingly.
I saw
Um,
your brain.
I was like, What is she saying?" My takeaway is what I had said, that really, sexy sentence that I said.
Oh, that was
That
so good earlier.
mm, acceptance is acknowledgement, not submission. My episode suggestion is 256, what to do when others let you down. What about you?
Mm. Mhm. That's a good jump off point. Um, the episode suggestion that I have is 262, although I would actually point towards yours a little bit more than mine. Yours first, mine second.
Ooh.
Uh-huh. But if you want to go down this rabbit hole, I think that this would be valuable too, dear listener. Because you're just constantly evolving. I think that it is super important to reflect upon what your responsibility is within all of this realm. And I know a lot of our strugglers, our listeners struggle with responsibility, that being a core belief that it's all their responsibility. So 262,
Mm.
how much is actually your responsibility, will be another jump off point. And I will leave it at that.
All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.